Hi everyone, this is round 6 of the Pan American Intercollegiate Chess Championship. This is a team event. I'm representing Shippensburg University, and we are playing in this round the University of Massachusetts Amherst, the main UMass, the only UMass, the only real UMass, as some people say. And coming into this round, we are 3.5 out of 5, and if we win, we have a very, very good chance of winning second, third, or fourth place because we have some of the best tie breaks out of any team. So we were coming in with this must-win mindset, and with that being said, let's just hop right in. So my opponent plays, let's see, my opponent plays knight of 3, and I play d5. And after g3, I play c5. And so I like to go, if they allow me to, I like to go for the maximalist approach of really putting all the pawns I can in the center of the board and going for like a reverse King's Indian. So, which if for those of you who don't know, the King's Indian is a very common weapon with the black pieces. So it's reverse colors here. So he allows me. So one thing that white could do, they could go a bishop g2 and after knight c6 play d4. Well, d4 like this, and this would actually transpose to a different opening, or usually transposes to a different opening called the Catalan. After something like this, this would transpose back to a different opening. So, but instead he allows me to have the full center after let's see, knight c6 and e5, and I'm very, very comfortable in these positions. And the key concept that I am aware of is that after where I don't commit this f6 knight, I wait for the center to lock up first. So I develop both my bishops out, and after he pushes e4, I push d4, closing the center, and now I'm going to start my h-pawn advance. This is my setup. This is how I like to play against it. And I usually get pretty good positions with it online. I haven't really played it over the board, I don't think, because it's just very uncommon for white to allow black to just take the whole center like this. Put 3 pawns in the center like this is very uncommon. So I'm very happy I got the chance to do it, and I felt very optimistic about my chances. So he plays b3. I believe it's so to support his knight coming to c4. Like, for example, he didn't want to play knight c4 now because he didn't want me to take it, and he didn't like this for himself. I'm not sure if I would have taken his knight on c4 because I actually really like my light square bishop. I might have just gone queen c7. So I'm not sure if b3 was necessary, but he plays it anyways. And now I play h5, I'm going forward with my plan. And I'm going to just really attack him on the king side. That's kind of my plan here. I may either keep my king in the center or castle queen side. And in some cases, I might still castle king side, depending on what happens with all of these pawns. Just depending on what happens with those pawns. So I play h5. He attacks my pawn in the center with both of these knights, and I only have one defender. I considered h4. But I couldn't find a way to justify the fact that I'm giving up a pawn in the center. So I thought it was unnecessary. I did consider it though, but I didn't think about it for that long. Instead, I just play a normal move, queen c7. Another alternative move I was thinking about a lot was f6. f6 also prepares potential g5 pushes. I could also maybe do knight h6 and knight f7, which I do later in the game. And I thought f6 was a good alternative. I actually don't know what he would do next. He might go move this other knight out, and then after h4, play f4 like this. So this could have been what happened if I played f6 instead of queen c7. But I thought I could just play queen c7, which gets me one move closer to castling. And it allows him to go knight g5. So why do I say allows him to? Because I actually don't think it's that good for him. So I wanted to give him this option because after I take, so he did play knight g5 in the game. So I take, he takes, and now I win a tempo with the move f6. And I have one connect 4, which in and of itself is already really nice. But more than that, he has to move his bishop back, and now I play h4. So I felt very good about that trade, about allowing knight g5. I ended up not getting that much out of it as I intended. So he plays f4 here, and I take, and suddenly this is the first position where I think for 23 minutes. I think for over 20 minutes twice in this game. And this is one of the two positions where I did so. And I kind of overestimated my position. And I actually didn't like I still thought I was better for sure. But I didn't think this position was anything special for me. One of my original ideas was to go bishop h3. But it didn't seem that appealing, because after bishop takes, king g2, rook back somewhere, let's say king h8 for example, then you can go rook h1, and if I take, queen takes, castles, check here, and rook h1, I was thinking to myself, like, am I really better here? If anybody's worse, it's probably me. So I didn't like my evaluation of that. Also, side note, I don't like to do these recaps with any engine on, but I do at the end of this video. I will run the game through game review for everyone's pleasure. So I thought about that for a long time and trying to evaluate if I can make it work. Because otherwise, if I don't move my bishop out, he's playing f5. He's going to try to shut down the king side and make this bishop useless. However, I decided against bishop h3 because of the line I just showed, and instead I just decided to castle. Because after f5, I just take his knight. And we're in a very interesting situation where I have these knights and he has these bishops. However, look at how hard it is to actually move these pawns. Like, these pawns are all locked in place, and if he ever goes c3, then I can take, and I have a nice square for my knight, and I have an open file for my rook. So he can never, like, his only pawn break in this position is like playing for g4 and then g5, and that might take him some time. And also, he might not even want to do that because his king's on the side of the board. So I thought for sure there's no way I'm worse in this position. And if anything, my knights have a lot of long-term ability to hop around this position, even though really all four minor pieces kind of suck. Like, actually, I don't really have that many squares for my knight. Like, if I ever go knight b4, you can always kick it out. I would love to get my knight to the deeper dark squares, but it would be really hard to. Like, I have to get a knight here to here to here, and even then he can snap it off. So it's probably around balance here, but I was still relatively happy with my life choices. So this position did happen in the game, and now it's my move, and I play knight h6. Planning to rotate the knight and possibly going even knight d6. So if I go knight f7 to knight d6, then it would guard this b7 pawn, and it doesn't matter if he puts two rooks and a queen on this b file. My knight on d6 will always guard b7 very, very well, and his bishop is still trapped. Like, this bishop is in jail. Like, it committed crimes. Like, it is not a good bishop. This bishop, on the other hand, is very good, and I end up making in hindsight, a kind of wild decision, but I thought it was a great idea. I actually felt like a savant, and let me get to it. So he plays king f2. He wants to counteract the rook on my h-file with his own rook on the h-file. I don't think that's necessary, because his bishop on g2, although it's bad and it can't really move, is staring into its own pawns. It does do a good job of defending the light squares around the king. So I'm not sure if king f2 was necessary, but it's definitely not a bad move. And now I go knight f7, and moving the knight to f7, it blocks the queen's defense of the g pawn, and it no longer covers the g4 square. So now he goes queen g4, and he's asking me a question. He's asking me, what are you going to do about your pawn? And I think this is my second 23-minute think of the game. Because my original plan was to go either knight g5 before he put his queen there, or knight d6, which was kind of my safe move that I thought, okay, this is definitely not a bad move. But after knight d6 and rook h1, I really had a hard time contemplating how I'm going to win this game. Like, how am I going to win this game? Like, his bishop does a good job. Like, maybe I go, like, I was thinking, okay, if something like this happens, then maybe I can go knight b4, and I'm attacking both of these pawns, and if he takes, maybe I can go here, but then he gets counterplay on the h7 and h8 squares, and I was like, I was just calculating this, and I was like, I'm not sure about that, but then I came up with a very interesting idea, which is to go knight g5 here. Knight g5, which sacrifices a pawn. So he takes, I take, and he takes again. So I'm down one pawn. But his best minor piece, which was the dark square bishop that controls all the dark squares in the position, he had to trade it off, and now his only minor piece is the light squared bishop, which is stuck behind his own pawns. And I felt like, I think I have compensation. Like, I think I have really great compensation here, because after he takes, I'm going to slide my queen over and control all the dark squares. And if he gets too greedy, and takes another pawn, well, I'm just winning now, because I go check, and if he goes up, then I think I just have check here, and I win the queen. And if he goes backwards, I still go rook hg8, and after he moves the queen, he's being attacked, and I don't think there's any way out of this. Like, I'm going to put my other rook in the g file, and I'm not sure how he's going to survive. So that's if he gets greedy and takes the second pawn. So I thought even if he doesn't take the second pawn, I think I still have great compensation. The dark squares are all mine. I'm going to tickle his position by going queen c3 and attacking these pawns. And I think I have, I think I'm doing just fine here. I still don't think I'm worse. So he goes rook fb1, which I thought was a little bit weird, but I guess he wanted to keep the defense of his a2 pawn. And I still go in with my queen. And then he plays queen c1. And I felt like, okay, this is awesome. I have the initiative here. I'm getting closer into his position, and he's making retreating moves. Like, I think I'm doing pretty good. But I failed to realize his threats. Because here, rook b3 looks annoying. Like, it just straight up looks relatively annoying. I thought about knight b4 here. Knight b4 was one of my original ideas, but I actually dismissed it because after rook b2, I was like, I don't really have any threats. Like, let's say I go like rook h2, for example. Well, now a3, I have to put my queen back, and now I get hit with the same move. So rook b3, and I have to make a lot of retreating moves. So I thought, okay, well, knight b4 doesn't really do anything, even though it does attack the pawn. So I thought knight b4 wasn't good enough, even though it was one of my original ideas. So then I was like, oh wait, I could go knight a5 because it guards the b3 square. So now the rook can't go to it. And now my queen will live here for a long time. But I completely missed his idea, which is to go a4. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I realize I'm losing. I realize I'm losing. Because, well, his queen and his rooks are about to trap my queen. So, for example, if he had another move, he would play rook a3, and my queen actually has no escape here. Like, no escape at all. Like, for example, like rook h2, rook a3, and my queen, I can't get out, and I'm going to go on to lose this game. So after a4, I play knight c6, and here he misses his crucial win, which is to cut off the queen's escape with the move rook b5. And my queen's in no man's land and will die alone and sad because there's nothing black can do to save their queen. If you attack the rook, you may be getting some things. Like maybe this is white's best try. And it does look like you get some compensation. Although you do get two rooks in this case. I wonder after a6 if there's a better move for white. Rook b3. Maybe it's just taking this pawn. Yeah. You take this pawn. Although you have to be very careful here. Yeah. Yeah, you have to be very careful. So maybe white can somehow weasel out of it. I actually thought the queen was totally trapped, but maybe a6 actually saves black a little bit, but still not a good position. Still not a good position at all. And maybe there's something better that white can do. Anyways, but he plays rook b3 and then rook b5. So now my queen gets out very easily, and my queen rotated back to c7. So it rotated from queen d8 to c7 to a5 to c3 to a5 to c7. It just went all the way backwards, which is kind of funny. And here I was so upset at myself. I was more upset at myself here because I was like, oh my gosh, like after a4, because I'm like, I just lost our team the match. We're not going to go 4.5 out of 6, and we're going to not get any plaques on the top, because top 4 teams get plaques. So I was like, we're not going to make it, and, this was all for nothing, and it's all because I messed up. But then I was like, you know what? It's fine. I'm going to lose a second pawn. I'm going to end up losing the c5 pawn, but I'm just going to try to play the best moves and see what I can do from there. That was kind of my thought process. So he wins this pawn on c5, but now I'm going to go for counterplay. I'm going to play for g6 and try to open up his king and try to attack him. His light square bishop is such a good defender that he's still much, much better. He's just up 2 pawns. Like, maybe much better is an exaggeration, but he's up 2 pawns, and I do not have any compensation for it. But it's going to be, I'm going to try to make it as hard as it possibly can be for him to win. So another thing here is that I did not play queen e7, attacking his rook and forcing it to move. I actually decided to keep this move, queen e7, in my pocket to potentially have forks, or potentially have ideas of like hitting 2 squares at the same time. And that's actually a very common idea that you should be aware of. Like, maybe queen e7 is the best move. But practically speaking, like, sometimes you can use the fact that your opponent has an undefended piece and like let it be undefended and attack it when you can attack 2 things at the same time. So I think the way I phrased that was kind of weird, but hopefully you understand the point I'm trying to make, that like I wanted him to keep this piece on a square where it was not defended, just in case in the future I might have something. And I do actually. It actually becomes a very useful idea, very useful for his rook to be under attack on the square undefended. So he plays a5, and I end up playing king c7. I don't remember my alternative moves. I think a6 was one of my alternative moves. I didn't like it because b6 is such a big hole in black's position, and white's rook may look a bit off center, but white's rook always has the d5 square supported by the pawns that white can always play. So I didn't like the move a6, and it definitely felt like this pawn would be a huge liability long term as well. So I went king c7 because now if he tries to play a6, I can lock the position down. And he's definitely not breaking through on the queen side now because of how locked these pawns are. And I felt pretty okay about this if he did play a6. So I play king c7, and he does not play a6. He plays queen g5. So now he's trying to limit my counterplay by preventing the g6 pawn break. Because let's say he did something lazy like this move. I'm going to play g6, and I'm going to attempt to open things up. Whether or not it actually works, I'm going to try to, because I have nothing else to do. I'm just going to try it. I want to make the game as complicated as possible. Of course, playing g6 and taking, it would open up his own bishop and give him a lot more attacking chances. So I don't think he necessarily needs to stop g6 from happening, considering that he's 2 pawns up, and if I take here, it would open up his bishop. So, but he does try to prevent it. However, this, now the queen is a bit of a target because now I can hit the queen with my rook, defended by my other queen, and he has to move back. And he decides to go queen g4, still preventing the g6 pawn break. I actually thought, and I wasn't worried about queen g6. That's another move that I had to consider because I thought I could actually take and go rook g5, and I'm winning one of my pawns back. And this pawn seems relatively weak, and his bishop is still bad. Although this might, he might try to do something like this and get his bishop on e4. And yeah, this definitely looks a bit tough if this did happen. So I might not go for the g6 pawn immediately. I might go for a check. And if he goes here, then I can pin. And this looks pretty strong. Although maybe it's still fine. So, but I wasn't too worried. If he did play queen g6, I probably would have taken. I actually don't have any alternatives. Like rook f8 is one alternative, but I don't think this is getting me anywhere. So but maybe in hindsight, queen g6 was good. And instead he goes back. He doesn't want to go into the queenless endgame. And now that gives me time to double up rooks. And do you remember what I said about the queen going on e7, attacking the undefended rook? Well, now after rook f1, rook f1 again, playing against this g6 pawn break, I think. Because he wants to move his king back either here or here, and now his rook supports the pawn, and the rook is x-raying the queen. So I think that was his idea, rook f1. It also brings the rook closer to the king's defense. And if you see, like, the initiative, like, I have the initiative now, like, weirdly enough, even though I'm down 2 pawns, and it seemed like all of his heavy pieces were targeting my king, but instead of going towards my king, he ends up playing like defensive moves, which objectively probably doesn't make his position worse than mine because I'm still down 2 pawns, but it does give me some hope. And that's all I really need. So as rook f1, I do play queen e7, and here it is very, very useful because I'm guarding the g5 square and I'm attacking the rook. So after he moves his rook, I'm able to play rook g5, and I had one trap in this position. I only had, like, so if he plays queen f3, I was thinking about maybe playing knight b4 is an idea, attacking this pawn, and if he defends it, then I have some moves that I can play, as we'll see soon. But he can maybe just play rook here, and everything's guarded well enough, and he does have to worry about getting his bishop rook trapped, though, but it feels like it always has enough squares. So the game goes on, point is, after queen f3. But he plays the one move he didn't need to, and that was queen e2. And here, I sacrifice the rook. Rook takes g3. And if he takes, then I go check, supported by the rook, and checkmate. So I saw this idea of rook takes g3, and I played it immediately after queen e2. And here he's just busted. It's actually, checkmate is unstoppable. Well, not unstoppable. You could go king e1, but then you lose your queen. So it's actually crazy how, yeah, his dark squares are extremely weak. And me giving up the pawn to get rid of his dark square bishop ended up being extremely useful. Even though immediately it wasn't very apparent that it was a good move. And I ended up losing 2 pawns. But in this position, like, he played some maybe lazy moves, maybe a bit too harsh. But he ended up getting hit pieces on weird squares. And suddenly the control of his dark squares is very, very useful. And yeah, rook takes g3. And I'm just straight up winning. So after king g1, I go queen h4. And it's actually mate is unstoppable. He plays rook f3, but I actually don't see the checkmate. This bishop is pinned to the king, so actually I can play queen h1 check, and after king f2, this is just checkmate. So I don't see it. Instead, I just think here for like 4 minutes, and I just play rook takes, queen takes, and on my board 3, so my board 1 drew, or my board 1, he won his game. Board 4 lost his game, and my board 3 was up a bishop. So at this point, I just saw my board 3 was up a bishop. So I'm like, okay, it doesn't matter if I draw the game because we're still gonna win the match. So that was my mentality. So that's why I just made that rook trade, even though I mean, I hope if I thought for another 4 minutes, I would have saw the mate in two, but I don't know. Apparently, I'm blind. But I thought, okay, whatever. I'm never gonna lose this game. I'm either gonna win or draw this game, so I'm totally fine here. So I end up trading rooks, and I go queen e1 check. At the bishop blocks, I set up checkmate, and he should probably play queen g2 or something like that. And the game goes on, and I think I'm still down a pawn, right? Like three. Yeah, I'm still down a pawn, but I'm probably not gonna lose this game. But instead, instead of that, um, he just goes rook b1, and he's playing on the increment, and he blunders checkmate in one, which hey, honestly, you could considering that I didn't see checkmate in two, you could just keep giving me checkmate because hey, I might not notice, but this time I did notice, and the game ended like that. So kind of a tragic way to end for him, but a great way to end for me. And we ended up winning the match, and we finished the tournament with 4.5 out of 6. And as long as if there's a draw within the top any of the top three boards, because we're on board 4, so if there's a draw on any of the top three boards, we're gonna get either second or third place because we have better tiebreaks than any of the top three teams. Um, but unfortunately, all of the games were decisive. All the matches were decisive, and we actually got fifth place on tiebreaks. So, um, the top three teams finished 5 out of 6. University of Connecticut, New York University, and another team I forgot, and then Sacred Heart University, our third round opponents. They beat us on tiebreaks in the last round. They actually thought they would not win on tiebreaks because because we had the best tiebreak scores, but unfortunately they lost their match, the final match, because they were heading into the match. They had 4.5 out of 5, but they lost and they beat us on the last round tiebreaks, and we ended up getting fifth place. So we took home nothing. We have no plaques to show for our hard work, and I was honestly pretty sad about that, especially if you saw my round 5 game against University of Washington, how it was just in my fingers that game. I almost had it, and I failed. I failed our team. So I felt very happy once we won this game, and we just needed one of those top three teams, top three boards to draw their match, and we would have been in the money, but we were not. And that's that. That's the game, and it was very sad for me to see, but it is what it is. And yeah, it was a good tournament. As a team, we finished 4.5 out of 6, and as an individual, as me, I finished 4.5 out of 6, and I gained about 13 rating points, so nothing crazy. I went from 1925 to 1938, but yeah, it is what it is. And honestly, this game was overall pretty interesting. I think the key moment, yeah, h5 here was very good by me. I loved my position. I even loved this. I wonder if h4 was really the best move, because imagine a scenario like castles. I guess he probably still would have gone f4, I guess, and it could have transposed to the same thing that happened in the game. But I do wonder if h4 is the best move. It's definitely the most like thematic. I'm just pawn storming him, but I wonder if it's the best. And here, I think I make the right decision to just castle and do this trade. Like, I still think this endgame is awesome for me, or late middle game, however you want to look at it. I still think it's very good, but objectively speaking, probably putting the knight on d6 and not giving up a pawn is probably best. And honestly, after rook h1, I think it could be a draw potentially, but there's still a lot of play left. But this is probably what I should have gone for. I just didn't like his a-file counterplay, and I didn't like how I couldn't find many ideas in my head about this position. So, but this is probably what I should have gone for. Instead, I sacrificed this pawn, which probably wasn't that bad. I still think is probably not that bad. Um, but I do the wrong maneuvers here. I try to force things, and I end up, basically getting my queen trapped and losing a second pawn by force, if not worse. And yeah, I'm lucky to have survived. But a few defensive lazy moves by him, and I'm back in the game, and I end up winning. So it was very dramatic. This tournament was extremely stressful, but I'm somewhat glad it's over. But I'm also very, very sad. So with that being said, I'll just I'll end it here. I'm gonna hit the game review, and I'll see you guys in the next one.